Hello, and welcome to this online training webinar for foster parents. Compassion Fatigue, How to Treat Secondary Traumatic Stress in Foster Parents. I'm your host, Dr. John DeGarmo, the director and founder of the Foster Care Institute, and I thank you for joining us on this, what I believe to be a very, very relevant and important online training webinar for all foster parents. Our goal of this webinar is to increase the awareness of compassion fatigue in foster parents. Our key objectives are to increase your awareness of what compassion fatigue is and how it impacts the life of a foster parent, how it impacts your life. You will also gain understanding of how to develop and implement strategies designed to best treat foster parents who suffer from compassion fatigue. Here is a picture of my family. I have been blessed over the years to have 3 children biologically. I have adopted 3 children from the foster care system. I have suffered from 4 failed adoptions, and I have also had the wonderful gift of having over 50 children in my home from the foster care system over 15 years. And my friend, I have suffered from compassion fatigue. My wife, Dr. Kelly DeGarmo, has suffered from compassion fatigue. I talk to foster parents all the time from across the nation and across the globe who have suffered or who are suffering from compassion fatigue. My friend, it is quite likely that you have suffered from it as well at some point. But before we examine what compassion fatigue truly is, we need to understand what the children go through, what they experience when they are placed into the foster care system. We've discussed this many times on other webinars, but I want you to imagine very briefly a child who is taken suddenly, without any explanation whatsoever, taken suddenly, removed from her family, her siblings, her parents, her relatives, her grandparents, her bedroom, her house, her home, by a caseworker and perhaps even a law enforcer. Taken suddenly, without any explanation, from their school, from their neighborhood, from their church if they should go to church, everything that they know, everything that is familiar to them, again, suddenly and without any type of warning, and placed or thrust into a home with strangers, your home, a home of people they do not know, the foster parents, your family. For these children, it is a time of uncertainty. It is a time perhaps of guilt, and for many of these children, they cannot express themselves. They are unable to express how they feel. Now, why do we look at this? Because how these children feel when they come to your home affects how you relate to these children. But what about the foster parent themselves? What about you? Again, we've looked at these in other webinars. As a foster parent, you invest all of your time. You invest all of your time. This is a 24-hour day job, 7 days a week, many times 365 days a year. There is no time off as a foster parent. I often tell my friends that I go to work to rest. Because when you come home and you have visitations and you have court hearings and you have doctor's appointments and you have therapy appointments and you have school and you have homework and you have laundry and dishes and cooking and cleaning and homework, whatever it may be, you have all of those things and it's 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night and the child is suffering from some type of emotional memories and you are just exhausted. You invest all of your time. You invest yourself emotionally. See, if you're like me, when the child comes into your home, you feel what they're feeling. The pain and the abuse that they're suffering from, you internalize that into your own heart. You invest yourself physically. Whether the child is an infant, a toddler, pre-K, middle school grades, high school, you invest yourselves physically just trying to keep up with that child. Make no mistake, you invest all of your life. The lifestyle of a foster parent is far different than the lifestyle of your friends of your coworkers at work, of your family members, at people at your church, your faith-based group. You live a lifestyle that is so demanding. I can promise you this, your friends and family members truly do not understand, nor can they relate. The lifestyle of a foster parent when you are caring for these children in your home and in your family who have suffered from great abuse and great trauma and great anxiety, your lifestyle is different than others. But that's okay. I believe that as foster parents, we make certain sacrifices. We make certain sacrifices in our life to care for these children. And I do it happily so, and like you do as well. But make no mistake, foster parenting is often the hardest job you will ever do. Now, a recent study of 376 foster parents found this. Less than 20%, only 19% of us felt adequately prepared for the departure of the child. When the child left, we did not feel prepared for the departure of the child. I know I did not. My first placement was with us for 4 months. And when the child left, sure, I went through training just like you. I understood what was going to happen, but when the child actually left my home, I was not prepared for the huge hole in my heart. I was not prepared for the pain, the heartbreak I was experiencing. I didn't know what was going on. 36% of us felt we were taught the skills in our foster parent training to cope with a child's removal. Compassion fatigue for foster parents is a very real condition. Again, you might be going through it right now. I have suffered from it. I probably will suffer from it again at some point. Look at that picture there, please. Is that you? Have you been there before? Are you there now? What is compassion fatigue? Well, Dr. Charles Figley says this, and I quote him: "The natural consequent behaviors resulting from knowledge about a traumatizing event experienced by a significant other. It is the stress resulting from helping or wanting to help a traumatized or suffering person." Look at that quote. Compassion fatigue is the stress that we get when we want to help somebody who is suffering, somebody who's traumatized. We get that stress when we wish to help them or when we help them. Compassion fatigue is often known, or otherwise known as secondary traumatic stress, or STS. Now, as foster parents, we are likely to experience an emotional or physical response to a variety of stresses or anxieties. When we care for those children, we will experience a physical or emotional response to a number of anxieties or stresses when we care for children who have suffered from abuse. When children who come into our home and our family who have suffered from neglect, we will experience a stress or anxiety when we care for them. These children who have suffered from all this trauma, we are going to experience some type of emotional or physical response when we care for these children in our home. Foster parents, just like you, my friend, are at risk from secondary traumatic stress when we work with these children on a daily basis, and when we live with these children 24 hours a day. See, you're not a caseworker, you're not a teacher, you're not a child welfare advocate, you're not a therapist, you're not a counselor, you are a foster parent. You will work with these children and you will live with these children 24 hours a day. And this makes you at risk for secondary traumatic stress. This makes you at risk for compassion fatigue. Dr. Naomi Rachel Remen says this: the expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. Let's look at that first part of the quote again. The expectation that we can be completely immersed, that we can completely live in a world, in a household of suffering and loss every single day and not be affected by it, that is unrealistic. So what causes secondary traumatic stress? Well, let's look at that picture there. What is he doing? He is exhausted. He is worn out. He is tired beyond belief. He is feeling fatigue. My friend, I was there several years ago. I was that man several years ago. I was so tired. I was just beyond exhausted. I suffered from compassion fatigue. What causes it? To begin with empathy. When you feel the child's pain, when you feel the child's suffering, you take it into your own heart. If you are like me, when you get that phone call and you ask, like I do, why the child's being placed into foster care, and then you hear the story why, you hear the reason why the child's placed into foster care and being placed in your home, and you hear that reason, those stories of abuse, those stories of trauma, when you hear that, if you're like me, your heart goes out to that child. You feel it in your heart. See, you have compassion for these children. This is why you do it. This is why you are a foster parent, because you have the compassion for these children and you want to help them. You want to make a difference. You want to change their life. You want to protect these children. You take their pain into your own heart and it becomes your own. But you are at risk of overemphasizing or over-identifying with that child. You place yourself at risk of internalizing that child's pain and of internalizing that child's trauma. My friend, this is what happens to me. I internalize their pain. I internalize their abuse, and it becomes personal to me. I have to protect these children from it. I can't let that happen to these children again. I internalize it. Perhaps you're like Julie, who suffered from personal trauma. Julie, of course, I've changed her name. When Julie was 7 years of age, Julie was raped by a cousin. Raped from age 7 to 12. When Julie finally confronted her mother about it and told her mother about it, Julie's mother did not know what to do. Julie's family and her mother's siblings, aunts and uncles and cousins, were very, very tight-knit. A tight-knit family. They were a very Catholic family. They did not discuss these things. They swept it under the carpet, so to speak, and tried not to acknowledge it and instead forget about it. They did not want to accept that somebody in their family, a close member of the family, was doing this to Julie. Years later, when Julie got married, she never shared it with her husband. She tried to bury it down. She was taught to do so. Julie's second placement was a 7-year-old girl who had been raped by her father. You can imagine what happened. When Julie found out about this 7-year-old girl who was living in her home, about her experience with rape, Julie's own memories resurfaced. Julie's own pain resurfaced. Julie had to suddenly deal and confront her own past. It was not easy for Julie. It was not easy for Julie's husband. It was not easy for the child. You may be like Julie. You may have experienced your own traumatic event of some kind or suffered some type of personal loss. Your own feelings are triggered as you care for children in your home and in your family who have had similar experiences and have suffered from serious abuse, and similar traumas. Indeed, you make yourself more at risk. If you have suffered your own personal trauma, similar trauma, you make yourself more at risk for internalizing the trauma of the child in your home who has suffered like you and has had similar experiences like you did. There was a point in time years ago where my wife and I had children in foster care live in our family and in our home for 4 years without a break. Without a break. One time we had a sibling group of 3 who were with us for about 4 months. The day they left, the same day we got a placement for another child. That child would live with us for about 6 months. When that child left the next day, we got a sibling group of 2 who was with us for about a year and a half. And on the cycle went for 4 years. When a child left, another one would come immediately, within 24 hours. Now we did this because we felt we needed to help the children and there was not enough foster parents in our area. But as you can imagine, after that 4 years were up, we just felt completely burned out, worn down, and we knew we had to give our family and our own children attention. We did not give ourselves time to recover. As one child leaves your home and another soon arrives, you do not allow yourselves time to grieve, time to heal, time for some time off from this emotionally demanding lifestyle. And my friend, it is just that. It is a demanding lifestyle. It demands so much of your time. It demands so much of you physically. It demands so much of you emotionally. And if you do not allow yourself time off now and then, you are setting yourself up for compassion fatigue. So now that we know what it is, what does it look like? Well, some of these symptoms are, some of these emotional symptoms are anger, anxiety, deep sadness, prolonged grief. There was a point a few years ago where we had a child live with us for about a year and a half. She came to us when she was 4 years of age. When she left, we had been planning to adopt her. Her grandmother came in and swept her up and took her to the home. Our adoption process was stifled very quickly, without any explanation whatsoever. It was very, very suddenly. I recall coming back home one day, 3 weeks after the child had left, and there was my wife on the bathroom floor, in tears and speechless. She was suffering from deep sadness and from grief. The grief was for quite some time. Perhaps you're there. Perhaps you have anger at the system. Perhaps you have anger at the caseworker. Perhaps you have anger at the birth parents or the judge. Maybe you are experiencing tremendous anxiety. Personally, you may become very, very cynical. You may become cynical of how the foster care system works. You may become irritable. Maybe you suffer from mood swings. Or maybe you just isolate yourself from the rest of your friends, your family, and from the world. Physically, you may experience backaches. Maybe you experience exhaustion. My wife suffers from severe headaches. Perhaps you do too. Perhaps you have stomach aches. For me, I just get very, very weary. Cognitively, you may have a preoccupation. You may just dwell over and over and over again, and you cannot escape thinking about the trauma. Maybe you have a loss of meaning in your life. Maybe you're filled with self-doubt. Maybe you minimize everything. Spiritually, maybe you question the meaning of life. Maybe you just have seen so much pain and suffering over the years of little children innocent children who have come to live in your home and with your family, and you just question why it all happens. Why does this happen in life? Maybe you have a loss of purpose. Maybe you have a lack of self-satisfaction. Maybe you question your own religious values and your own religious beliefs. So we have seen what compassion fatigue is, what it looks like. Now, how do we treat it? Well, to begin with, my friend, you need to take time for yourself. Time for you. I know this sounds easy, but we both recognize as a foster parent, this is difficult, isn't it? It surely is. You need to look after yourself. Nobody else will look after you except you. You see, if you're married or you have a partner, there is something special about you, something unique about you that makes you you, that makes you special. Your wife, your partner, your spouse married you, joined with you, lives with you because of you. Don't neglect it. Don't forget that. Look at that picture there. See, they have circled, or in a heart, if you will, on the calendar, some me time. Make sure you get yourself some me time. Schedule some me time for you. Take time for yourself. Those hobbies, those interests of yours that you love to do, make sure you do it. For me, I enjoy working in the garden. It allows me to escape. It allows me to think. It allows me to relax. It allows me to meditate and to pray. And I just love it. I love to do it. But so many times I don't allow myself to do it because there's so many kids in my house. My garden goes neglected. I don't want to do that. I love being out there. When I'm not out there, I get frustrated. I get anxious. I get agitated. I get tired. Whatever your hobby is, whatever your interest is, make sure you do that. Read. Whatever you like to do, read. Read whatever you like to do, or read about compassion fatigue. Spend time with your friends. Go to lunch with them. Go on a walk with them every morning or after school. Go to the gym with them. Go to the basketball game with them. Have a girls' day out or a guys' night out. But spend some time with friends. Now, if you are married, and we've discussed this in our marriage webinar, if you are married, make sure your spouse, my friend, give your spouse time off from the home, time off from you. Give your spouse time to go off by themselves or go off with their friends because they need that time. You have to give them permission and to make time for them to have that time away. Schedule some personal quiet time. For me, I get up 20 minutes early every morning. Not enough time, but I get up 20 minutes early in the mornings for some prayer time and for some quiet time. I also find quiet time in the garden or when I'm driving home from work or from a conference, speaking conference or a keynote. I find that quiet time. Know when to say no. Don't be like me, my wife and I, where we said yes to every foster care placement over the course of 4 years. Know when you have to say no to a placement. Recognize when you are suffering from compassion fatigue. Recognize when you have not allowed yourself time to grieve. Recognize when you are so tired, fatigued, upset, just worn down. Recognize this and accept the fact that you can say no to a placement. Because if you don't say no to every single placement, if you don't say no when you are suffering from secondary traumatic stress, you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to hurt your family, and you're going to hurt that child. Now, be in the moment. Be in the moment. What do I mean by this? Well, don't dwell on tomorrow's problems. Don't worry about tomorrow or the things that are simply out of your control. There's enough worries about today, right? Right. Stay focused on what's happening here and now. Don't allow the worries of tomorrow, of next week, of next month, of the future, don't allow them to overwhelm you. Be focused on what's happening here and now and try to find joy in that. We've heard this, I'm sure. I'm sure you've heard the same thing I've heard so many times. They say to me, Dr. John, I couldn't do what you do. It would hurt too much to give the kids back. I don't want to become too attached, right? Well, my friend, I want you to become too attached. I want you to become attached. Allow yourself the opportunity to have your heart broken. Now, that sounds a little strange, doesn't it? But my friend, it is healthy for you to become emotionally invested in that child, to wrap your heart around that child, to love that child unconditionally, because the child needs that from you to grow and from the heal from the pain. And when you shield yourself, try to protect yourself, when you try to hide that love or not give as much love, it's not going to hurt the child, it will hurt you as well. Allow yourself your heart to break. Sure, it hurts, but we know that we need to give ourselves time as well. Exercise, exercise, exercise. Boy, I wish I did more of it. When we exercise, it allows our endorphins to be released, which helps us to feel great and revitalize our well being. When we exercise, it helps with compassion fatigue because we feel better. Now, my wife is a doctor of nutrition, and you've heard me say this before on some other webinars that everything in our house is all organic. It's all non-processed food, and I love my Fruity Pebbles, right? Sure, you've heard me say it before. You probably read it in some of my books. When I eat those Fruity Pebbles and I eat that ice cream and I eat that junk food, I do not feel good. I do not have the energy that I need. I feel sluggish. I feel tired. When we eat a healthy diet, it gives us the right energy we need, and it helps to prevent that burnout. It helps to prevent that stress. It helps to prevent that compassion fatigue. I tell so many people that I'll sleep next year or I'll sleep when I die because there's so much going on in our household when we have kids in foster care. And I'm sure you're the same way. But my friend, you know this to be true. A good night's sleep helps our health, helps our well being, and it helps our productivity. So, one of the ways you can help treat compassion fatigue is with good exercise, with good sleep, and with good diet time. It's hard to find. I understand that. But try to carve out time for each of those, okay? Patience is one way to treat compassion fatigue. Look at that picture there. Have you been there? Have you been there? She's on the phone. There are kids screaming in the background. She's trying to hear, and she looks not only tired, she looks frustrated, doesn't she? You've probably been there. Maybe you're there right now. Try not to lose control over a situation in your household. If possible, try to remain in control and remain patient. Remain patient. You are the adult. You are in control. Remain in control of your feelings. Remain in control of your emotions. Respond in a calm fashion when a child is upsetting you and with compassion. Now, if you are struggling with patience, if you're struggling with staying in control, call for that time out. Step away from the situation. Walk to another room. Allow your spouse to handle it. Go to some place and give yourself that 10 count that you need, that counting to 10. This will help you to de-escalate the situation and will help to prevent compassion fatigue. Because remember the fatigue part of it, you're worn out, you're worn down. Don't take it personally. Remember, a child's going to come into your home and they are in pain. They are suffering, they're hurt, they're scared. They may attack you verbally. They may attack you physically. They may attack you emotionally. Remind yourself, the child's not attacking you personally. They're attacking their pain that they're suffering from. It's not about you. They're responding because they are hurting. They're scared. They're afraid. They're in pain. Don't respond back to them in a harsh manner or emotionally. Instead, focus on the behavior of the child at hand, the behavior at the time, and respond to why the child is feeling this way, and try to do so in a non-emotional way. Finally, you can treat compassion fatigue with support group. It is important to surround yourself with people who will support you. Your friends, maybe people at work, your immediate family, perhaps people at church or faith-based group. But my friend, No one can truly appreciate what you're going through. No one truly understands what you're dealing with. No one has really felt the exact way you have felt, like another foster parent. So, if possible, join your local foster parent association or your local foster parent support group. If it's a statewide one, join that. Join a national group like the National Foster Parent Association. If you do not know how to start your own local foster parent association or support group, contact your child welfare organization or your caseworker. If you still don't know how to do so, my friend, shoot me an email, contact me, and I will help you set up your own foster parent support group. You need it. For more information about this topic or others, visit my website, the Foster Care Institute, or simply Google Dr. John DeGarmo. You'll find a wealth of information on this topic and other topics regarding foster parenting and foster care. Follow me on Twitter and on Facebook, where I'll be posting information like this and other things regarding foster care. And there's my email address. If you have questions about this webinar, this topic, or others, please feel free to contact me, won't you? My friend, we go into this in much further detail in the book, The Foster Care Survival Guide, the essential guide for today's foster parents. Look for it on my website, look for it at Amazon.com and in bookstores and online, and I'll be happy to send you a signed copy of this book or any of my other books. Hey, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being part of this webinar. I want to thank you for being part of the Foster Care Institute. If you're a paid subscribed member of a Foster Care Institute, I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you most importantly, though, for doing what you do, for caring for children in your home, for being a foster parent. Make sure, my friend, make sure you recognize what compassion fatigue is and how to treat it. If you can't treat it, if you don't treat it, you can't help the children in your home. For the Foster Care Institute, I'm Dr. John DeGarmo.